Much of the world is still paralyzed by COVID-19, and many are placing all their hopes in a safe and reliable vaccine. At the moment, more than 160 are being developed worldwide, and it's becoming a major race to see who can develop the first vaccine. The latest, Russia declares victory. But is it really a win for Moscow? And who else is leading the race? I'm Tu Huiao, and I'm going to break it all down for you. First, let's take a look at what happened lately. Last Tuesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that his country has registered the world's first vaccine against the novel coronavirus. But why Russia? Well, the country claims it has been at the forefront of vaccine development for years, including developing a vaccine for Ebola and MERS. Those experiences helped it to create a vaccine against the COVID-19. So far, Russia has already received applications for over 1 billion doses of the vaccine from 20 countries. If everything goes well, the vaccine could be available by this November.
Our vaccine demonstrated both the antibody response and what's called T-cell response. We believe that for longer immunity, 2 shots are needed because antibodies could start being reduced very quickly with just 1 shot. So we believe it's important to have 2 shots.
Well, Russia may have declared victory, but there are doubts over the efficacy and safety of its vaccine. For 2 reasons. First, Russia approved the vaccine without completing the last stage of clinical trials. Second, no data has been published from its earlier trials.
We don't have sufficient information at this point to make a judgment on that, and we're currently in conversation with Russia to get additional information, understand the status of that product, the trials that have been undertaken, and then what the next steps might be.
Here's how vaccine development works. Vaccines generally go through 3 stages of human testing before being approved for widespread use. The first 2 phases tested on relatively small groups of people to see if it causes harm. The last phase, known as phase 3, compares the vaccine to a placebo in tens of thousands of people. That final stage is the only way to know whether a vaccine can prevent an infection and how effective it is. And because it tests a much larger group of people, a phase 3 trial can also detect more subtle adverse effects of a vaccine that earlier trials could not. So where is China in this global race? The WHO last week confirmed the 6 vaccine candidates in late-stage trials. They're Sinopharm, Sinovac, and CanSino Biologics. These developers have all received approval for a phase 3 trial of their vaccine candidates. Sinovac has tested its vaccine in Brazil on more than 9,000 participants. Sinopharm has started its late-stage testing in the United Arab Emirates with 15,000 volunteers. It has built the world's largest production facility for COVID-19 vaccines in Beijing, which has the capacity to produce 120 million doses a year, while its plant in Wuhan can make another 100 million. And CanSino is set to begin its phase 3 trials in several countries, including Russia.
For a vaccine, safety comes first. Before we conduct human trials, we must do a lot of research. We can't make sure it's absolutely safe, but we'll try our best to ensure the minimization of risks in clinic trials.
Here's what happens next. Once the clinical trials are finished, it will enter the final approval stage. Scientists are hopeful that we will have a vaccine by the end of this year. And China has pledged to make its vaccine a global public good, meaning to make it accessible to and affordable for developing countries. However, we should not get our hopes up too high, as some scientists warn that we still know too little about the novel coronavirus, and that immunity from these vaccines might not last very long.
Think about influenza. We have got quite used to taking a vaccine every year for influenza because there's a different strain that comes through every year. It might mean it's possible that if the immunity doesn't last very long, that we might have to have an annual vaccine for this coronavirus. But at the moment, we really don't know.
And there are many other questions. For instance, who should get first access to these vaccines? The medical staff, the elderly, and who else? And which countries should have priority access? Can the current capacity meet the larger demands? Perhaps these discussions should be underway before we all fight over these vaccines.